Ruth was celebrated for her compassionate and caring nature. She grew up in a tight-knit village where everyone knew one another. Her mother was a teacher, and her father labored tirelessly on their farm. From an early age, Ruth's parents instilled in her the value of helping others, a principle that deeply influenced her. As Ruth observed her parents' actions, she learned that kindness was the most precious gift one could offer. It brought her immense joy to witness others' happiness, whether through sharing a meal or offering assistance. Ruth aspired to emulate her parents, dreaming of spreading goodwill wherever she went. As Ruth matured, she pursued a career as a health worker, dedicating her days to caring for the sick and elderly in her village. Her selflessness earned her admiration from the entire community, and she found fulfillment in knowing her efforts made a difference. One evening, after a long day treating a boy who had fallen from a tree, Ruth was walking home from the clinic. Despite her fatigue, she felt a sense of contentment. Near the village entrance, she noticed a young man sitting beneath a tree. His clothes were tattered, and he appeared frail and cold. Although Ruth had encountered people in need before, something about this man struck her. He wasn't begging or asking for help. He simply sat silently, staring at the ground. Without hesitation, Ruth approached him. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. The man looked up, and Ruth could see the pain in his eyes. He shook his head but remained silent. Ruth hesitated briefly, aware of the risks involved in helping a stranger at night, but she couldn't abandon him. "My name is Ruth," she said softly. "You can come to my home. I'll give you something to eat and a place to rest." The man looked at her in surprise, unable to speak but eventually nodding in acceptance. Ruth helped him to his feet, and together they walked to her modest home on the edge of the village. Once there, she guided him inside and offered him a seat. Her home was simple but welcoming. "I'll get you something to eat," she said, disappearing into the kitchen. As she prepared a meal of rice and beans, she found herself wondering about the man. Who was he? What had brought him to sit alone under that tree? When Ruth returned with the food, he was sitting quietly, staring at the floor. "Eat," she said, placing the plate before him. "It's not much, but it will help." He nodded appreciatively and began eating. Ruth watched him, noting how thin and exhausted he looked. His hands trembled as he held the spoon, making it clear he hadn't eaten in some time. After finishing a few bites, he placed the spoon down and looked at Ruth. "Thank you," he said softly. "My name is Deo. I've been living on the streets for months now." Ruth's heart ached as she listened to his story. Deo had once been a skilled carpenter crafting beautiful furniture for nearby towns. He had a wife and a young son, but his world fell apart after a tragic accident claimed their lives. Overwhelmed by grief, Deo sank into depression, losing his home, job, and will to live. "I thought I had nothing left," Deo admitted, tears welling in his eyes. "I've been wandering aimlessly, unsure of where to go or what to do. Living on the streets isn't what I want anymore." Ruth listened with deep empathy, her own eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry, Deo," she said softly. "No one should have to endure what you've been through, but you're not alone anymore." For the first time in months, Deo felt a spark of hope. Ruth's compassion had reignited something he believed was lost forever: human connection. Over the following weeks, Ruth continued to care for Deo, providing him with food and shelter. She helped him find small jobs in the village, and gradually, Deo began to rebuild his life. He repaired broken furniture for villagers, regaining his strength little by little. As time passed, Deo found himself thinking about Ruth more often. He couldn't deny the feelings he was developing for her. Every time she smiled or laughed, his heart raced. Ruth was kind, intelligent, and beautiful, and Deo realized he wanted more than just friendship. One afternoon, as they chatted after completing some tasks, Deo mustered the courage to ask a question that had been on his mind. With his heart pounding, he asked, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Ruth blushed and smiled shyly. "No, I don't," she replied. Deo's heart soared with excitement. This was his chance. For a moment he hesitated, unsure if he should voice his feelings. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Ruth, I really like you. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I was wondering, would you be my girlfriend?" Deo's words lingered in the air as he held his breath, eagerly hoping for Ruth to reply. If she said yes, it could mark the start of something extraordinary, a chance for his romantic dreams to finally come true. Ruth paused, her heartbeat quickening as she gazed at Deo. She could see the depth of his feelings and realized she had always liked him too. Smiling warmly, she nodded and answered, "Yes, I'll be your girlfriend." Deo's face brightened with joy, and Ruth felt a surge of excitement rise within her. Both of them laughed, overwhelmed with happiness, as the moment felt utterly perfect. Without thinking, they moved closer and embraced tightly, as though they never wanted to part. The hug was warm and reassuring, filled with love and promises for the future. Then, for the first time, they shared a tender, sweet kiss. It was soft and new, but carried a depth of emotions they had never experienced before. In that instant, the world seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them, happy and full of love like never before. One quiet weekend, while Deo was alone at home, his thoughts drifted to Ruth. He longed to be closer to her, but was careful not to pressure her. He deeply valued her and appreciated everything she had done for him. If anything were to happen between them, he wanted it to come from her own desire. To his surprise, Ruth showed up at his home that very day. She entered with a warm smile and, without a word, leaned in to greet him with an unexpected kiss. Deo was momentarily stunned but overjoyed, feeling the depth of her affection for him. Looking into his eyes, Ruth asked softly, "How are you? Do you want to spend a romantic moment with me?" Ruth had always been kind and caring, traits instilled in her from a young age. She had never had a boyfriend before because no one had ever made her feel as safe and loved as Deo did. For the first time, she felt ready to open her heart to someone. Instead of fear, she felt excitement at the thought of sharing this new chapter of her life with someone she trusted. This connection felt unique and meaningful, and Ruth was confident that Deo would always respect and cherish her. As their relationship deepened, Ruth noticed how Deo's actions showed his genuine interest in her, making her feel more at ease around him. Their bond grew stronger, and Ruth found herself wanting to express how much she cared for him. She knew she held a special place in his heart, and the idea of being closer to him filled her with anticipation. One day, as they talked, Ruth observed how Deo's eyes lit up whenever he looked at her. With a playful smile, she leaned in closer, allowing her movements to speak for her. Deo was captivated, drawn to her more than ever before. Smiling shyly, Ruth gently took his hand and led him toward the bedroom. Her heart raced, but she felt safe knowing how much he cherished her. They both understood the significance of this moment. As they stepped into the room together, the connection between them deepened, one rooted in trust, care, and mutual desire. Lying on the bed, Ruth felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, as though butterflies were fluttering in her stomach. Deo, sitting beside her, seemed just as shy. He leaned in closer, their faces mere inches apart. Ruth could see every detail of his expression, and his warm smile made her heart skip a beat. She had never seen him look so vulnerable, and it touched her deeply. His eyes sparkled with admiration, shining like stars on a clear night. A blush crept across her cheeks, making her feel warm and cherished. In that moment, she realized how special their connection was. She had always admired Deo's kindness and humor, but seeing this side of him made her feel beautiful and appreciated. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly with curiosity. Deo's smile widened as he replied, "Because you're incredible, Ruth. You light up every room you walk into." Hearing his heartfelt words made Ruth's heart swell with happiness. She had never imagined someone would think of her in such a way. As their eyes locked, the world around them seemed to fade. The soft sunlight streaming through the window bathed them in a warm glow, creating an atmosphere that felt like their own little sanctuary. Ruth felt safe and content, as though they were in a world of their own. "Do you really mean that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Deo nodded, his expression earnest. "Yes, I do. You make me happy just by being here." His sincerity filled Ruth with joy. She had always admired how he could brighten her day and make her smile. For a moment, they sat together, feeling the palpable electricity in the air. This closeness was new and exhilarating for both of them. Ruth couldn't stop wondering what might come next. Would they laugh together, share their deepest thoughts, or perhaps discover what it truly meant to be close companions. As she locked eyes with Deo, Ruth felt a surge of bravery. "I think you're wonderful too, Deo. I always have," she admitted, her cheeks warming with a rosy hue. Deo's smile lit up his face, and Ruth's heart skipped a beat at the sight. Slowly, Deo let his hand glide over the curves of Ruth's body, his fingertips tracing the soft outlines of her waist and hips. His movements were gentle, almost cautious, as though he feared breaking the delicate atmosphere surrounding them. Each touch lingered, his fingers savoring the smoothness of her skin. Ruth's breath quickened, her heartbeat accelerating, yet she felt safe, cared for in a way she had never experienced before. Though both were shy, an unspoken bond grew between them, something too profound to be expressed with words. The warmth radiating from their closeness created a cocoon that seemed to shield them from the world beyond. In that still moment, time appeared to slow, leaving only Ruth and Deo wrapped in each other's presence. Deo's hand continued its tender journey, moving to her shoulder and then softly along her arm, as if he were committing every detail of her to memory. His touch remained light and respectful, as though he cherished the privilege of being near her. Ruth felt a surge of emotion she had long kept hidden. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to fully embrace the connection they shared. Their embrace tightened, their bodies fitting together as though they had always been meant to be this close. Each subtle motion, each gentle brush of their skin, deepened the connection between them. Deo leaned in, their foreheads touching, his warm breath brushing against her face. In the quiet moments between them, the rhythm of their breaths spoke the words they couldn't say aloud. Every caress and touch conveyed more than physical closeness. It was an exchange of trust and vulnerability, a letting go of fears and doubts they had carried for so long. Each second felt like a silent promise, a reassurance that they had found something genuine and lasting. Their connection grew stronger with each heartbeat, an unspoken affection filling the room. The outside world faded into the background, leaving only the two of them in a space of perfect harmony where their love took center stage. Together, they experienced a pure joy, wrapped in each other's arms, treasuring the beauty of their closeness. Deo held Ruth as though he'd never wanted to let her go, determined to keep this feeling alive for as long as possible. They could feel the steady rhythm of each other's hearts, beating in sync, a melody that spoke of love and trust. Ruth tilted her head to look up at him, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I never imagined it could feel like this," she whispered, her voice soft and filled with wonder. Deo's smile grew as his affection for her swelled. "Me neither," he replied. "It feels like nothing else matters but you and me." Brushing a strand of hair from her face, he gazed at her with a warmth that made the world outside seem irrelevant. "Do you remember the last time we read this?" he asked. "Ah," Juliet said, her voice small with pride. They exchanged soft laughter, their voices blending into a harmonious sound that echoed in the stillness of the room. Every smile shared felt like a promise of more beautiful moments to come. The intimacy of their bond made everything seem brighter, as though the sun shone solely for them. Deo leaned in closer, his breath brushing Ruth's cheek. "You're so beautiful," he murmured, his voice sincere. Ruth felt her cheeks flush as a mix of shyness and delight washed over her. "And you make me feel special," she responded, her heart fluttering with every word. In the serene bubble of their connection, they began to share their dreams and aspirations, weaving a vision of the future they hoped to build together. Deo spoke of creating a life filled with joy and love, while Ruth shared her desire to explore the world and its wonders. Each word brought them closer, creating a shared dream that deepened their bond. They held each other tighter, their hearts beating as one, finding warmth and solace in their togetherness. As days turned into weeks, Ruth and Deo's love grew stronger. Their relationship blossomed as they supported each other's dreams, celebrated small victories, and faced life's challenges hand in hand. Their love, built on a foundation of kindness, trust, and understanding, only deepened with time. One evening, under a sky lit by stars, Dale brought Ruth to the spot where they had first shared their dreams. The moonlight illuminated her face, accentuating her radiant smile. In that moment, Dale knew she was the one he wanted to spend his life with. His heart raced as he took her hands in his own. "Ruth, you've brought so much happiness into my life," he said, his voice full of emotion. "You make every day brighter, and I can't imagine my future without you." Ruth's eyes sparkled with surprise and joy as Deo reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, his hands trembling. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice filled with love and hope. Ruth gasped, her heart soaring, as she opened the box to reveal a beautiful ring shimmering in the moonlight. "Yes, yes, I will!" she exclaimed, tears of joy streaming down her face. Deo slipped the ring onto her finger, and in that instant they knew their lives were forever entwined. Their wedding was a joyous celebration of love and unity, surrounded by family and friends who had watched their love story unfold.